Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Landywood Snooker Club for the final session of the 2024 World Billiards Championship final. We've already had 2.5 hours. We have a further 2.5 hours to go, at the end of which we will immediately have the presentation, so please do stay in your seats, and we will present the semi-finalists, losing semi-finalists, the runner-up, and the winner of the championship. So Dave Causier is in hand. 2.5 hours, play.
We are back. Welcome everyone to the second and concluding session of the World Billiards Championship final of 2024. We resume with David Causier, 814 to 559 ahead of Rob Hall. And Causier is at the table trying to build on that lead, and immediately a mistake is made. I was chatting with David 10 or so minutes ago, and he was saying just how tough conditions are and how tough he was finding things in general. But, of course, he made the cannon, so it didn't really matter. It'll be interesting to see how this session pans out. It will also be interesting to have a chat with my co-commentator for the next half an hour or so. A fine player, Martin Goodwill.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Was a fine player, you should have said.
No, that's definitely not the case.
Yeah, nice to be here. I was just chatting with Dave, and he's obviously looking for a good start here to get a few on the board to take the pressure off.
And I think the word pressure is the most important word of the day for him. I think in line with what happened last year, he's determined to turn the page on that one, but also the fact he's such a dominant figure on the circuit that if he didn't win this, it would feel as though he'd not really completed the task, as it were.
Yeah, I guess so. Of course, Rob's a great player in his own right, and he's well capable of making sizable breaks and turning the game around. So it'll be an interesting, particularly the first 30, 45 minutes of this session, be very interesting to see how it goes.
I know, Martin, you had a highly pressurised job yourself as a pilot, a commercial pilot, after working in the military as well. So did the game of billiards help to calm you down, as it were, from those pressurised moments?
It's funny you should say that, yeah. It's such a fabulous, lovely game to play that when you're, I guess, you talk about being in the zone, but when you're in a game of billiards and you're really playing quite nicely, it's almost like meditation. It's a beautiful game to play.
So I would assume having a difficult in-off seems a lot easier when you've landed a plane in Madeira or Gibraltar or somewhere like that. Hong Kong, the old airport there.
Yeah, I never went to Hong Kong, but yeah, the places like Madeira and Gibraltar, they're famous for the bad winds. Gibraltar across the rock, but they're not too tricky. That's a nice cannon Dave's just played there. He's just grazed the white and left himself this. I'm not sure whether he's come up. He's trying to leave a nice little cannon to put that white behind the spot.
So tell us how you fared yourself this week, Martin.
Oh, not too well, really. I'm not playing particularly well at the moment. I need to put some practice in, the truth. I think I got the last 16. Got beaten by Darren, who played nicely. Technique's letting me down a little bit at the moment. Need to work on my cue action, and don't we all? And a bit of technique.
How do you find as you get older, sustaining concentration becomes more difficult? Because I know that's the case. Snooker players, even at the very highest level, they all say the same thing, that as you get older, keeping concentration for a lengthy period of time becomes more problematic.
Yeah, to be honest, I haven't really noticed that. Don't really have a problem with the concentration. At the moment, has he missed that? No, he's got it. Yeah, mainly with me, it's technique, I think. I need to work on cue action and delivery. One thing about both of these players is they've got really solid techniques. I guess you would say Dave is more unorthodox, but the cue delivery is beautiful.
Of course, David Causier hails from Middlesbrough, which is the ultimate sporting hotbed for the game of billiards. They've produced so many world-class players over the years because of the Teesside Boys Billiards League. It really is remarkable just how many extraordinary world-class players have come from such a small geographical area.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Years ago, there was a chap called Ralph Macklin who had a vision to set up the Teesside Boys Billiards League. And I sort of fell into it when I was about 11. I was one of the earlier ones. I'm 62 now. Dave was well behind, much younger than me. And I was sort of one of the early decent players, not one of the best players, but reasonable. Quite a lot of players like me. But then after me came Mike Russell, of course. Fabulous player. And then so many players like Peter Gilchrist, Dave Causier here, Chris Shutter won the World Championship, Lee Largan, and lots of other players as well. So a real hotbed of talent.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Mike Russell. What a talent.
Yeah, he's not playing at the moment as far as I'm aware. Oh, he probably is, but I know he does a bit of coaching, but he doesn't enter any tournaments. Be nice to see him back. It's always a pleasure to play against him, and it's a big challenge to try and beat him, which I've done only a couple of times, I think. Fantastic player.
So you've got to cross that balk line every 100 points, and Causier has done that. He's on 95 now, and it's looking good, actually. Just the start he needed. Mind you, he started quickly in the opening session with breaks of 92 and 151, and then it was only then the mistakes started to creep in, and to be frank, and I think he would be the first to admit, they started to creep in and they never really left.
No.
97.
What's that commentator's curse, they call it?
Yeah, absolutely. I've given up on trying to get away from it. I mean,
that was a tough shot, to be fair.
Yeah, but look at that. You know, he's been playing now for 2 hours, 40 minutes. High break 151. That's well below par for him.
Yeah, it is. Oh, Rob will still fancy his chances here. There's lots of time. And you were mentioning, Phil, that the tricky conditions, the beautiful conditions. This is a straw number 10 cloth, the sort of Rolls Royce of all cloths. And it's a lovely table, but the pockets are sharp, they're tight, and we've sort of evolved in the billiards world to follow the snooker fashion of these tighter pockets and the slippy cloths, which billiards was never really intended to play on. So it makes it quite challenging for certain shots.
Yeah, you and I have been around for many years in Q Sports, and I have to say, when you come across a facility like this, it always comes as a very pleasant surprise. Wonderful place. But that wasn't the most wonderful shot, I don't believe.
No, he should have made that. Oh, that's a fantastic shot. I think he's left the red. He's so good at these recovery shots.
Now, the in-off he's just played there, he missed one very similar to that earlier in the match. He put in a quick one, and it was obvious he was moving on the shot, but that was okay. I get the impression that the more he goes ahead, the bigger the lead, the fewer the inhibitions, and I think we'll see him play his normal game if that's the case. But again, Rob Hall gets back to the table quicker than he thought he might.
Yeah, you wouldn't that shot he's just missed, the short Jenny. You wouldn't expect him to miss that even on this challenging table.
We were talking about this earlier, Martin, and I think it is the case that Causier, it's all about the W for him today, all about the result. He's put in so many wonderful performances in various tournaments over the last year. Today, though, is all about the outcome. It's not how it's achieved. It's just purely and simply the win.
Yeah, I guess so. He won't mind if he doesn't make a 200 break as long as he takes the title. Nice pot from Rob.
Yeah, there's plenty of time to be impressive. Sometimes it's all about just being pragmatic. Of course, it would be the icing on the cake if he could do it with a heavy scoring display. Change of referee for this session, by the way. It's Paul Cosgriff, who was in the commentary box with me before the break.
A quick question for you, Phil. Are you still involved with Snooker Scene? Are you still...
Yes, I still write for Snooker Scene. I mean, obviously, big changes there because the passing of Clive Everton, we attended his funeral on Tuesday, and it was a very emotional occasion. But yes, the magazine is still going on. It's still featuring plenty of billiards, as you probably know. And yeah, I tend to write about the tournaments I attend, either pool or snooker. I don't think I'll be doing anything different for quite some time. It's not a payer for me, but I just feel such an emotional attachment to the magazine, having worked for it for, well, 36 years now.
Wow. Yeah, sadly I couldn't make Clive's funeral. I was playing the tournament here on the day. I played Clive on many occasions at billiards. He was a good billiards player. Decent.
Well, Martin, I can tell you this. He thought very highly of you.
Oh, that's nice to know. I've thought highly of him. He's a real gentleman and did a lot for the sport. And a very avid billiard player. You're probably aware myself and my good friend and colleague Roger Morgan published a book for Clive called The History of Billiards back in 2012. And after publishing it, we sold it for him on various platforms such as Amazon. And then I rang him up one day and said, you know what, Clive, why don't you just have all the books for free? And I took them over to his office and dropped them off.
Well, I'll tell you something you didn't know. When we went into the gathering after the funeral service, which was held a few miles away from the place where the funeral took place, it was all laid out very nicely. And on the tables were all of the books that Clive had written. And The History of Billiards was the book that was on my table.
Oh, that's nice. I think that book evolved because he'd written history books before, billiards and snooker, and then he wanted to do something just for billiards, and myself and Roger put that together for him.
Yeah, we had so many discussions over the years. Obviously, I spent a lot of time with him at tournaments, but also on the phone. And I was telling the story a little earlier on. He had no off switch. It was snooker and billiards all the way with him. He rang me on Christmas morning a couple of years ago to ask a provisional ranking of one of the players. It was
that's
about
right.
11 o'clock on Christmas morning.
Yeah, I used to, if I was abroad, I could often get a telephone call from him. Can you tell me about how this match went or how that match went? Good shot, Rob.
So, percentage-wise, what chance do you give Rob Hall in the match? Obviously, he's still in there, still contending.
I think he's second favourite at the moment, but not. He's not without a chance. I would say he's probably got, if you want to put a number on it, 42%. There you go.
The precision you would expect from a pilot.
It's by far from over, this game. There's a long way to go, and Rob's a class player. He just needs... Oh, that's a nice kiss on that red. It could have got underneath the red and left it safe, but it's come out nice. Yeah, Rob's a class player, so he just needs to make a break or two, and, you know, it's back to square one. But, of course, we've all seen Causier. Once Dave gets going, if he gets his tail up, he's a really good front runner. And such a quality player that he can rattle in 300 or 400 points in no time.
And what happened last year in the final, I think, was just a total abnormality. It was...
Yeah, you see, Peter's such a great player, and he kept it tight and left Dave awkward, and it becomes more of a challenge. But what odds would you give for Dave not making a century break in 5 hours? You give 50 to 1, I think.
Absolutely.
So what Dave will be trying to do now is go in off the red, bring it to the middle, and then he'll go in off the white, drop it behind the spot, pot the red, and he's at the top. Let's see if he does it. He's short with the red. So now he's got more work to do. So he'll go for second prize, which he'll drop the white behind the spot, or just to the left of the spot as we look at it. And now he'll play a drop cannon. And that's the second method of getting to the top. So he's gone option 2. And how well has he played that? See, 335 in it at this stage is not a massive lead. So Dave will be quite anxious to knock a few hundred points on the board.
Yeah, I think every single point he can muster would reduce his level of anxiety. Because in sport, in billiards, strange things happen. He's well aware of that. You can never be absolutely sure until you've built such a substantial lead. It's physically impossible for the other guy to come back.
I think these players, Dave and Rob, they're both improving year by year. They're both making strides in the game, and you know, they're both capable of very big breaks if they get going. So Dave's got the white jammed on the top cushion at the moment. 62. Did you ever watch Geet Sethi at all, Phil?
I watched him very briefly practicing with Michael Ferreira in the practice room of a snooker tournament. We were at Preston Guildhall. I did actually edit a book for Geet, and I knew him really, really well. What a nice guy.
Yeah, fantastic chap. I bring him up because he was prolific at scoring at this particular method of top of the table called postman's knock, with the white tight on the top cushion.
And you and he are linked because...
Are we?
Yes, you are.
Tell me about it.
Not only are you fine billiards players, but Geet Sethi and your good self have both made a 147 at snooker.
Oh, years ago, but only in practice. In a match, I've never been a really good snooker player. I won one tournament as a snooker player as a junior. I won a national tournament, but I've never been. I mean, the standard of snooker players these days, it just flabbergasts me how good they are.
tell you a story, a personal story about Geet Sethi and just what a star he was in India. The first time I ever saw the Chicago Cubs play at Wrigley Field, I'm a massive baseball fan. First time I ever went there, as Causier crosses that balk line. First time I ever went to Wrigley Field, when we were on the way back to the hotel, our taxi driver was an Indian, and I said, "Where are you from?" And he said, "Ahmedabad," which is the hometown of Geet, of course. And I happened to mention that I knew Geet very well and was good friends with him. And you would have thought I'd have said I knew the Beatles or someone of that fame ilk. Clearly, Geet's a massive star in India, and rightfully so, because he achieved so much.
Oh yeah, fabulous player. And a real gent. Cool as a cucumber.
If you are watching this, Geet, hope you're well.
Yeah, and you mentioned Michael Ferrara. Same to yourself, Michael. I have fond memories chatting to you over the years and playing you.
Yeah, Geet and Michael Ferreira used to come to snooker tournaments to cover those events for the newspapers in India. Came to many a World Championship.
So Dave tops the 1,000. 400 ahead and a few. And Michael Ferreira, by the way, he's one of the few players to he made a 1,000 break, and in the same game, I believe he made a 985. That's a lovely shot from Dave. So he's kissed that white off the cushion and left a pot. Oh, there again, a cannon. I thought he could get through.
I'm loath to say this, but are we seeing here the decisive thrust, I wonder?
I think it's too early to say. There's only 400 in it. He's overhit that. That's not good. Oh, he's got it. He's got in off the white.
Remember, Causier's highest break so far today, 151, so that's definitely under threat.
130. 135. 135.
He's so quick at racking up the points. See, that white is almost directly behind the red, which is... He'll try and get it to the side a little bit. It just makes the cannon easier off the cushion.
Now, a lot of people ask me this, and it's not pertinent to these two because it would never happen. But say you got well in front and you decided to really slow things down. What are the rules regarding the boundaries you can go to?
Well, to be quite honest, Phil, I'm not absolutely sure because it doesn't really happen. But I guess the ref has got the right to give a warning to the player.
Yeah,
you do see sometimes in games when, of course, you got 600 or 700 ahead, he would probably take no risk at all with all-round cannons, and he wouldn't mind a spell of safety play.
Yeah, it's a hypothetical point, but I think it's one of those things that, as you say, never really comes up, but it could come up.
One thing I find interesting about billiards is that people say, well, it's, there's a lot of safety, but in reality, compared to snooker, there's hardly any safety shots. I don't know whether you agree with me on that, but, sometimes I watch snooker and I switch it off because there's 15 minutes at the beginning of a frame. And I'm not underestimating the skill of these snooker players, but if they're clipping a red thin all the time and running to balk.
No, I fully agree, actually. The game has become more attacking over the years, of course, but as you say, standards have improved and standards in safety have improved as well, so sometimes they can cancel each other out. Lengthiest frame of snooker, by the way, on the professional tour, 2 hours and 3 minutes. It was Fergal O'Brien against David Gilbert, the final frame to qualify for the Crucible. And they were on the yellow for half an hour.
Wow. How do you remember all these stats? And
well, sometimes with difficulty, but yeah, some things stick in the mind.
One of the difficulties for billiards is if you have a, say we were playing 1500 up, you don't know the length of the match because you could have Causier who can knock up 1500 in 90 minutes sometimes or slightly more. And then the likes of myself could take 3 or 4 hours. Oh, Dave, he's missed that in the middle. Nice break from Dave, though. 185.
Yeah, he's best so far by 34 points. He's third century of the match. And now the lead is 488, which I think by any measure would be considered reasonably substantial.
Yeah, but in the quarterfinals, I think it was, Rob was playing Drevsik-Walder, a real gent, beautiful player, and he ran out with he certainly won the game at the end with a 300 knot. And both of these players are capable of making approximately 100 points per 5 minutes at the top. So half an hour or so, Rob could be back in the game. This is about the only bit of safety you get in billiards with a pot white double ball. And recently people have been complaining about it, saying it shouldn't even exist. But if you take it away, you have to be very careful with the rules of billiards. If you try changing the rules, then it can cascade into other things. You'd lose all the skills of coming off 3 cushions and hitting the balls. But everyone has their own opinion, of course.
Absolutely right. And, it's a little bit like the misrule in snooker. You hear lots of complaints about that. But is there a better alternative? I don't think so.
I have a problem with the misrule. Not in professional snooker, but I played the CIU National Snooker Championship years ago. And the first question my opponent asked me was, are we playing the misrule? And I find a rule that you have to decide whether you're going to use it or not is a challenging for the amateur player. It's not obviously for the pro snooker players because they've got a proper referee who's qualified. But if you're playing your mate down the club in a tournament and you're reffing each other, how do you police it?
Yeah, absolutely. I was talking about just the pro game, of course, which is very different from down the club on a Tuesday night.
Of course, yeah.
So when you were flying all over the world, Martin, did you take your cue with you to practice where you could?
I didn't. I never did. I once went to Belgium to have some lessons from the 3 cushion experts, but I didn't take my cue. There was never really enough time to... He's going to hit the yellow double balk himself. Hard luck, Rob. Have you had a chance to look at all the memorabilia around the club, Phil?
Yeah, absolutely incredible, actually. Some of the posters in particular.
It's wonderful, isn't it? Yeah, it's a beautiful job that Paul's done.
And also the old caricatures of the players that were done during the time of the Embassy World Snooker Championship and were illustrated by Jeff Tristram, who's a relative of mine, actually.
Oh, wow. So Dave's taking no risks. There's a bit of memorabilia. Willie Smith, there you go, versus Walter Lindrum. I often like, there you go, my memory all, that's London 1900, does it say? I often liken Dave Causier to the modern day Willie Smith. And I know Willie Smith was a fabulous player and made 2,000 breaks, but I often wonder if Dave was playing in these 2 or 3 week. Oh, 1930. See, my eyes are going already. If Dave was playing the 2 and 3 week matches that the likes of Willie Smith played, I think he, possibly in similar conditions, I'm sure he'd be in the mix with that sort of player.
Yeah. Again, talking about Clive Everton, I remember many conversations with him. He met Willie Smith.
You know, Willie Smith was from Darlington, which is about 10 miles from where I lived as a boy. And one of my biggest regrets is I never chased him up. I never got to meet him.
Yeah, there's Joe and Fred Davis in Liverpool in 1948. That looks like a snooker poster. Of course, Joe Davis was undefeated as the World Snooker Champion from 1927, the event's inception, until 1946, when Fred ran him very close in the final. And so Joe then decided to retire from the championship undefeated. He played in lots of other tournaments subsequently, but the 1946 World Championship was his last. Then the title was split between Walter Donaldson and Fred Davis for the next decade or so.
Well, I'll sign off, Phil. Lovely to meet you and chat about this fabulous game. It's we leave it with about, well, I leave it with about 500 points in it. So let's see what happens in the next half an hour. I'll hand over to Jason Colebrook, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, real pleasure to meet you, Martin, after all these years putting your name into snooker scene results pages. Finally get to meet you. Jason's just putting on his headset as we resume our partnership from earlier this afternoon.
Yes, I'm back. I heard you asking Martin about the time wasting and slow play situation. So a lot of people misunderstand that there's a rule about slow play. There isn't. There's a rule about deliberate time wasting. And it's quite a different thing. If a player is slow, but consistently slow through the whole match, that's not regarded as unfair. It's a player who's plays at a completely different pace when he wants to eat up some time. And the last time the rules were amended, we changed the rules. Now it's clear in the rules that the referee is allowed to stop the clock, warn the player, and then restart the clock when the player plays his shot. So where you get in the dying seconds, a player, he's maybe 2 or 3 in front and wants to chalk his cue, have the cue ball cleaned, any of that nonsense, do up his shoelaces, the referee can stop the clock, warn the player, and the referee can even add on time in extreme circumstances. Interestingly, since we brought that rule in, I've not seen it used. Nobody's misbehaving.
Well, that was a partial answer to my next question. Does it occur very often?
It used to. It used to, and they were not so much at this level, but at other, the lower levels, there were players notorious for time wasting. But it's not considered good sportsmanship. The tricky thing is sometimes you get a situation where there's a very difficult shot and it does require a lot of thought, and it can be a fine line between what's a reasonable amount of time to look at a shot and when you should get on with it. We had one situation in a match where I spoke to the referee after the match, and he said he was thinking that it had almost reached the point where he would stop the clock, but he didn't have to. But it's been a very good addition to the rules. It's now clear that a player that does that is not going to gain anything. The referee's going to stop the clock and can even add time on.
Yeah, it's real common sense, that, actually.
Yeah. And previously, the rules said that the player can be warned for time wasting, but if the clock's still ticking down, that's not really a solution to the problem.
Yeah, you can see aren't you going to warn me?
Yeah. Yeah. So this is a big leads opened up now. Right at the point where Rob needed to put in a break, Dave's put in a break. It's a clever little cannon.
Just seems freer to me, Causier, since the restart. I was chatting with him, actually. He said that, okay, he wasn't happy with his performance. This is during the break between sessions. He wasn't happy with his performance and he thought he should have scored more heavily. But he was very happy with the lead, and I think he was of the right mindset.
Yep. I think you're right when you've said a couple of times that he's focused on winning. He's not... there used to be an expression, winning ugly. I'm not suggesting that he's playing that bad, but he wants to win. This is the World Championship.
Yeah, I think he would be the first to say for him it is relatively ugly.
Yep. Yeah, no, it hasn't been neither of them have played up to their ability. And maybe it's the pressure. They're both very experienced competition players, but Rob said to me during the interval that he felt that Dave very rarely leaves good leaves, that he leaves them safe a lot. I don't know whether that's true or not, but I mean, it does tend to be, oh God. Sometimes when the players do miss, it is because they've spread the balls onto the cushions. That's an extraordinary miss from Rob there.
And David Causier out of his chair like a greyhound. Well, greyhounds don't sit in chairs, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. I think he'll be feeling pretty free now. Oh, he's hit that a bit too hard. Into Vork. That was definitely not his intention. You see that shot played a bit. He's hoping that the white catches the red and knocks it out. But he's left himself a screw back cannon anyway. Unless he's going to play some middle pocket losers. Yep. Yeah, Rob will be disappointed that things haven't really gone his way so far.
Yes, because he's been in 3 World Finals and hasn't got the trophy yet. 2017 IBSF World Championship, 2015 the short format of the World Billiards Championship, lost 6-1 to David Causier, and then in 2014 in the long format, which is this one, at the Northern Snooker Centre in Leeds, he was beaten quite handily by Pankaj Advani.
It's a pity Pankaj is not here. He's a great player. He's competing in the IBSF Snooker at the moment in Doha. Very classy player. As is Saurav Kathari, who's also competing in the IBSF Snooker. Saurav won this event in 2018 and reached the final against Peter in 2019. I really rate Saurav as a player. I enjoy watching him play.
It was a cosmopolitan gathering, though, this week. 10 nations, 3 continents represented.
Yes, no, it was great. We almost had a player from Myanmar this year. There's a very strong player in Myanmar called Causier. Unfortunately, the the bureaucracy in their country, they had to get permission from the Sports Council for him to come, and it just didn't happen in time. We had to fill his spot with somewhat the next person on the waiting list. But that would have been great. There are quite strong billiard players in Thailand and Vietnam too, but very hard to attract them to this event.
Yeah, I remember a Thai player, Rom Surin. That was his stage name.
Yeah, Praput, we usually call him these days, and the next name's unpronounceable.
Prapruit Chatanasakun.
That's him, yeah. He's a great player. Good snooker player too. But he's won an IBSF World Championship, Praput. Billiards is stronger than people think in Asia, particularly Southeast Asia, because it's in the SEA Games. The Southeast Asian Games is every 2 years. It's like our Commonwealth Games, and billiards and snooker and pool are all in that event. And since billiards was included in the SEA Games, all of the Southeast Asian countries play billiards. It was always played in Myanmar because it's always been played in Commonwealth countries primarily. Yeah, Myanmar have some great players. They had one very good player, Chitko Ko, who sadly passed away from COVID quite early in the pandemic. He's only 38 years old, had a young son. It was rare, for younger people to be so badly affected by COVID, but I don't know what happened there. He seemed like a fit and healthy young guy.
It's 4.5 years ago, and it seems like forever, but it will remain with us, I think, for all of our lives.
Oh, it was just strange times. Very strange times.
Well, we were at a tournament in Llandudno in North Wales, which was abandoned. We were actually at the event, but it was abandoned on the first day because we couldn't go ahead because of government regulations. And then I had the honour and the privilege of being involved in the very first live broadcast of sport from the UK on June the 1st when certain restrictions were lifted.
Yeah, well, we didn't hold World Championships in 2020 and 2021. I think by 2021 we may have been able to play here in England, but nobody else could come. So it would have been unfair to hold a championship. And it's affected the sport. And I know back home in Australia, we'd have a billiards league every year, and the same guys would front up, every year, more or less by force of habit. And there was no league for a sort of year and a half, and a number of them just never came back. They got out of the habit of coming along every Wednesday night for billiards league. They found other interests.
Yes, and of course other sports prospered, particularly golf, because it was an outdoor sport and there were no dangers or very little. So while we're digressing and chatting away, David Causier's lead is now building up into significant proportions.
Yeah, very hard to come back from this. Not impossible, but very difficult. It's very missable, this cannon. It looks simple, but it's very missable. Oh, he's played it that way. I thought he was going to play it thin off the cushion. Look at the pace of this. He's brought this red back down into the corner. That's a beautiful shot.
His best shots today have been shots of a very similar ilk to that.
Yeah.
His pace.
Oh, his pace is fantastic. There's a certain shot he played in Ireland a number of times. It's hard for me to explain, but he had to send the cue ball around the table and finish up in one particular spot, and he got a perfect every time.
Yeah, that's red ball in particular is travelling an awful lot of bays, and yet it's coming round into a position he wants pretty much all the time.
Peter Gilchrist's very good at that shot too. He often sets up that shot to screw back from the red and send the red into baulk and back down to join the balls again. He's very good.
So it's another ton up. Before this match, Causier had made 4 breaks over 300 in the championship, 11 over 200 and 35 over 100. So by the end of this final, I think the 35 will have expanded to 40 at least.
Yeah, when he's hot, he's an absolute machine. And so fast.
So the lead is now in excess of 600 points.
Richard Ebden has commented that it's a shame that billiards is not played in the Commonwealth or Olympic Games. I can assure you, Richard, it's not for want of trying. Various bodies are, lobbying to have it included. There's a big push to have it included in the Brisbane Olympics. I can't remember what year it is now, 2032. It's a never-ending battle. One of our problems, of course, is that there are so many cue sports all competing. And so some time ago, the IOC encouraged the cue sports community to set up one body to lobby, which is the World Confederation of Billiard Sports, which represents billiards and snooker, carom and pool. But very hard to get it into the sport.
Yes, and of course the Commonwealth Games has been redirected, hasn't it, the next one, to Glasgow, and because of budgetary constraints, they've had to reduce the number of sports represented there.
Yeah. It's for people that love the sport, it's frustrating to see something like breakdancing make it into the Olympics and we can't get in. Very frustrating.
Well, David Causier is leading Rob Hall the merry dance here, and he's breaking the back of this match.
Back at top of the table, 145 and going. And playing very freely now.
Yeah, in the second half of the match, he looks like a different player.
Yeah. I think these players are all fairly deep thinkers about their own approach to the game, and I think sometimes that mid-session interval, they can give themselves a bit of a talking to. Or just to be able to switch off for a little while and then switch back on.
You know, in snooker these days, we see an awful lot of best of 7 frame snooker, which is a match without an interval. Before it used to be the predominant distance was best of 9s with an interval. And the amount of times you see intervals change matches in that game, and I think it's changed this particular contest as well.
Yeah. Well, as you'd probably know, at some levels of pool, they have a timeout. A player can request a timeout. And quite often it's not for a comfort break, it's to change the rhythm of the game. Maybe break the other guy's flow and the player to get his head together or his or her head together. So he's 180 odd now. This is a baulk line crossing. Now this is tough. Wow. That's a very free-flowing attacking shot. I guess no risk because the other guy's ball's on the cushion. So, but what a great shot.
David Causier, 192.
So he's missed left rod, tough pot along the top cushion. These are so missable.
And he's left a round number as well, i.e. a lead of 700 exactly.
Not sure what Rob will do here, whether he'll take on the red. He may play a thin cannon off the red to the right-hand side cushion and back to the yellow, or he may play safe. It's a very tough leave, this one. On the pockets we used to play on, he would have taken this pot red on no hesitation. That's a great cannon. But it's left him awkward. He's bridging over the yellow. But that was a great cannon. It's having a good long look at this. You probably try and pot this red, but it's so difficult. I just think he's played the cannon. And
Yeah.
just missed.
There are two problems when you're queuing over a ball like that. One is just plain and simple alignment is compromised, but also, even if the alignment is correct, there's always the chance you can impart some unwanted side in. Of course, in this game, that's the death knell.
Absolutely. When the butt of the cue raised, any side will cause a little bit of swerve. You know, it's very tough when you're bridging over another ball. I'm always impressed when I watch the pro snooker players bridging over a whole pack and potting balls. At least in billiards, you're only ever bridging over one ball.
So basically, when billiards began, it was very much a forerunner of snooker. Then snooker came on in the mid-1870s. And to the people who were selling sets of balls, it must have seemed like all of their Christmases came at once, because instead of selling 3 balls, you were selling 22.
Yes, no, it's a, I don't know, when probably round about the 1950s is when snooker overtook billiards for popularity, maybe even earlier than that. And now it's very much the dominant sport played on these tables.
But you know, Jason, you and all of the fine folk here are doing a wonderful job in keeping this game alive and prospering, because the skill level of its top exponents, as we've seen today, is simply magnificent. And the enthusiasm and the enjoyment it gives to so many people, it is definitely worth keeping alive.
Absolutely. One thing that's interesting is a good billiards player can play snooker or pool quite confidently. The same is not always true in reverse. I've seen a lot of snooker players completely lost when they have a crack at billiards. You can get away with a slightly imperfect technique in billiards, but the knowledge, you need the knowledge. Billiard players are very generous with sharing their knowledge. You'll see in any billiards tournament, you'll see a group of guys sitting in the bar, moving salt and pepper shakers and glasses around on the table to represent various positions and discussing. You know, they'll be asking the top guys, what did you do here? Why did you do that? What side did you play? So this is Brendan Devlin from Ireland. Brendan's doing the check scoring. So he's recording every single stroke that's made on the table. He's got a shorthand method of, for pot or cannon or miss or safeties or whatever. He records every single shot that's made. That's in addition to the scoring that you see on the screen.
Takes me back to my youth when I used to do cricket scoring.
Yeah, exactly the same, yes. Everyone's billiards aficionados are always interested in the average. What did the player average per visit? Now, in last year's final, which was a very low-scoring final, Peter averaged about 36 and Dave averaged about 15. Dave averaged 80 in the final of the English Open this year, and in one of his matches, one of the group stage matches in this, he averaged 100, which is top class, absolutely top class.
So Max Harrison has said, David's gone up a gear or two. Here comes a 500 break. Well, Max, I hope you are correct, because I'd love to see one. Roscoe has asked, will Rob play on till the end, or will there be a handshake at some point? Well, the match will be played. Don't worry about that.
Yes, it's considered bad form to concede a match before the end. In fact, in the World Billiards terms and conditions, a player can lose his ranking points or prize money if he concedes a match. People, they sit down to watch a 2-hour session. They want a 2-hour session. There's money for the high break. Rob could still make the high break. It's only in the 300s, the high break for this tournament, so Rob could still make the high break.
Well, of course, he's got it at the moment, 364.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah.
I think that's Causier's next incentive.
But no, there's very rarely are there concessions. And there's people in the room, watching this match. They've come here to watch 2.5 hours of billiards this session. That's what they want.
I've got the great privilege these days of doing a lot of 9-ball pool for the World 9-Ball Tour, and it's surprising how many matches you see where the loser waves the white flag and basically concedes when the other guy's got a simple 9-ball on.
Yep.
Now, no one's suggesting they're going to miss, but there's always the chance of a miscue.
Yeah. I'm always surprised at that too. When I see the Singapore pool athletes sparring in the training facility there, they very rarely pop the 9-ball. The other guy concedes, racks them up.
So it's another century. And David Causier has turned on the afterburners.
This is more the sort of form he's displayed right throughout this tournament.
At one point in that first session, Rob Hall got within 180 points of Causier, and you wondered whether there might be some kind of repeat of last year. I think those thoughts have now completely been dispelled.
Someone's asked about the cues. Yeah, Rob has a one-piece cue. It's a Dave Cutes cue. He's a cue maker here in England, very highly regarded. Rob thinks he's the best cue maker in England. Dave has a 2-piece cue. Dave's using a blue diamond tip. It's kind of an old-fashioned tip these days, but he's always used that, and he said he sees no reason to change. Rob uses a Straits Billiards tip, Paradigm Soft. I think he must have got a kick there. He still made the cannon, but he very quickly walked away, asked for the cue ball to be cleaned. I don't know the brand of cue that Dave has.
I would hazard a guess, and I might be completely incorrect. It's one he's been using for a very long time.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think he's a collector. A lot of these top players are also cue collectors and collectors of memorabilia. Peter Gilchrist has cues all over the place in Singapore. He's got cues in the National Academy, cues in the Singapore Cricket Club, and cues in his wardrobe at home. But I don't think Dave does that.
I'll tell you one thing he does collect: trophies.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing with these international events. We always give trophies. They're usually quite heavy, crystal or metal things. And they don't know what to do with them when they go home. They've got so many. I mean, a World Championship trophy is different, but all the minor events, they over a lifetime, they just have so many trophies. And sometimes I've had some of the international players at events complain that the trophy's too heavy. They're too close to their luggage allowance on the flight home.
Yeah, so Brian Barnett has told us that David Causier's cue is at Burrows and Watts. You know, we were talking about Fred Davis earlier, who won the World Billiards Championship in 1980 at the age of 67. Well, he turned professional as a teenager, and he played his last match on the World Snooker Tour at the age of 78. And throughout that time, he used one cue.
Wow. So Matthews asked whether we consider Dave the best modern day player. That's a tough one. Mike Russell was considered possibly the best player when he was still competing regularly a few years ago. And Pankaj Advani from India is an absolutely top player. And between the top few guys, Peter, of course, they all have their day. The Cricket Club of India held an invitational last year. Dave and Pankaj played in the final. Pankaj made an 850 break and won that one. But it could go the other way next time they play. It wasn't balk-line crossing and it wasn't on a star table. The pockets are a little more generous, but it's still 850 is a big break.
Play that one with a touch of side, which coaxed the ball in on the in-off.
Oh.
So the break ends at 196, the highest of this final. And David Causier's grip on the final becomes ever tighter.
And I can tell from the Rob's walk around the table, he's not happy that he hasn't been left anything nice again. I don't think the run through and off the yellow's on. Very difficult pot red in the middle, but might have to go for it. Yeah, good shot.
Yeah, I think Matthew Lawrenson has got it right. The maiden wooden object David Causier is concerned about is the next trophy cabinet he needs to buy. Yeah, I think he fills them up with regularity. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 centuries in the match.
So someone's asked any advice for beginner players. If you go to the World Billiards website, I'm afraid I can't remember exactly what part of it, but there's a copy of Martin Goodwell's book is available to download from the website, and it's called his first book was called the Snooker Player's Guide to English Billiards. It's a great book to start with. It covers all the basic shots. It's very well illustrated, very well written. You'll learn an awful lot from that book, and it's free to download. You may have to sign up as a member, but that doesn't cost you anything. I've just got a message to register to the website, and it's under resources.
Matthew Woodward asks, star tables versus Rasson tables, which are better? Well, I'm not going to give an opinion on that. What I will say is both are excellent. and they are different in the way they play. We use the Rasson tables for Snooker Championship League and also for the Champion of Champions. And we use the Rasson tables as well for quite a few of the big World 9-Ball Tour events. As for the star tables, they are used for the vast majority of the World Snooker Tour tournaments. And players, generally speaking, have never been party to better conditions.
The SBI Academy in Ireland, the Snooker and Billiards Ireland Academy, has 4 star tables and 4 Rassons. I'm an ex-furniture maker. I like the look of the Rasson tables. I'm not keen on the look of the star tables. I think the Rasson tables play a tiny bit easier and a slightly stronger bounce off the cushions or something, but there's really not a lot of difference.
Oh,
Wow.
you just get the feeling here that there's a feeling of dispirited. That's what Rob Hall is, dispirited. And you can entirely understand why. It's such a big occasion for him. And I think the realisation is starting to dawn that it's not going to be the outcome he wants.
Yep. Yeah, I won't say he's no chance of winning from here, but it's a big ask. At this stage of a match, you really just want to acquit yourself well. He'd love to make a big break, even if it's not enough.
But you just get the feeling now with David Causier, he's expressing himself, he's enjoying himself.
Yeah. I don't think he'll show any sign of fatigue either. Even it's a 5-hour final. He's had a break in the middle. The toughest day in our World Championship days is quarter and semi-final day. They play 7 hours. They play a 3-hour semi-final and a 4-hour, 3-hour quarter-final, a 4-hour semi-final. And the players don't seem tired by the end of it. We had cracking good quarter-finals this year. 3 of the quarter-finals featured the Indians, and with probably half an hour to go, we could have had 3 Indians in the semi-finals instead of none. They were great matches. Gary's posted some info about Dave's cue. Burrows and Watts green badge mascot, originally 1 piece, modified to 3/4. Thanks, Gary. I know a 3/4 cue fits in the boot of most cars, not necessarily a 1 piece. I don't know what Dave drives, but I suspect he probably carries the cue in his car when he goes to work and goes straight to the club.
Well, there was a story many years ago. They were playing the old Rothmans Grand Prix at the Hexagon Theatre in Reading, snooker this is, and Cliff Thorburn, although he's Canadian, didn't live too far away. He got to the venue, opened his boot, and his cue wasn't in the car. He'd left it behind, and it was too late to go back for it. So he borrowed the cue that John Spencer had been using for a while, and you think, well, it's going to be okay, the cue, but of course you need to get used to it. And he did not. He lost 5-0 in no time to someone he should have beaten and was a big favourite to beat.
Wow. The World Billiards Championship in Singapore, one of the English players, his cue didn't arrive. And he has a cue with a titanium ferrule, and as do I, and I was the tournament director that year, so I lent him my cue. He played with my cue for about the first 2 or 3 days. Then his cue arrived, and the first match he asked me, he put his cue aside and asked if he could finish off with my cue. because he'd gotten used to it. I think the next day he swapped back to his own cue. It's very common these days that, unfortunately, we're 30 or 40 players fly in somewhere for a tournament. Somebody's cue nearly always goes missing or is late. One time Rob's cue was broken. It looked like it was driven over on the tarmac by one of the airport vehicles.
Just undercut that red, caught the near jaw, and as we know on these star tables, when you do that, they will not drop.
Very unforgiving.
Yeah, cues are very individual things. There was a great story at the qualifiers many years ago. We were up at the Norbrook Castle Hotel in Blackpool, and there was a guy playing up there, and his dad decided to go maybe the 50 miles to Haydock Races to see the horses. It was an evening meeting because it was the summer. And his dad unintentionally took his cue with him in the boot. So the match was about to begin, and this player realised what the situation was. He borrowed a cue. He battled away, playing poorly by his standards, to 4-4. All of this time, pre-mobiles, of course, all of this time, he's been trying to get messages to Haydock to come on the tannoy there and say, will so-and-so get back to the venue? Yeah. I need my cue. So his father did hear one of these messages at the racecourse, dashed back to the Norbrook Castle. He arrived just in time for the deciding frame. The player in question got his own cue back, and of course, what happened? He lost the frame.
Wow. There's a bit of discussion on the titanium ferrules that I mentioned earlier. The general theory is that the more weight there is towards the front end of your cue, the more deflection you're likely to get when you play with side. And the titanium ferrule is lighter than the brass ferrule. Whether that's the way it works or not, but I know that the cues with a lot of wood, in the front quarter, do tend to get a lot of deflection. My old English cue is quite a lot of wood in it with a brass ferrule, and I used to get an enormous amount of deflection.
Now, I'd like Rob Hall to use this visit as a showpiece for his talents. We all know how good he can be.
So this is perfect for a drop cannon. You like these drop cannons where the red's not too close to the cushion. There's less chance of getting a cover.
27.
That's pretty good. I hope he makes a break. Rob does a lot of coaching. He's a very good coach. He's got a very good website, which I should be able to remember the name, but I can't. But I think it's robhallbilliards.com. Very informative, lots of good little videos. He does travels around England quite a lot, he'll give a travel to somewhere for the weekend, and he'll be booked up well in advance for all his coaching.
37.
He enjoys coaching. Plus, it's a bit of pocket money too, I suppose. The referee for this session's Paul Cosgrove from Australia. Used to referee on the World Snooker Tour.
Well, he was involved in one of the funniest incidents I think we've ever seen. It was a match between Alan McManus and Tony Drago, and basically Drago missed a shot and conceded, and then he realised that he conceded when his opponent wasn't enough ahead to leave Drago needing a snooker, and that meant that automatically Tony Drager would be fined £250. He didn't want to pay that fine, of course. And so he asked Paul Cosgriff if there's any way he could rescind his concession. So Paul went up to Alan McManus and he went, Alan, do you want to take the concession? And Alan's a really good friend of mine. We talk about this all the time. He went, yes. And so poor old Tony, not only did he lose the match, but because of that moment of madness, as it were, he had to pay a £250 fine.
Wow. Paul does a lot of refereeing in Australia, and he's also a very good tournament director. And he has when he needs it, he has a booming voice. When you've got a room with 8 or 10 tables and you've got to try and get everyone to be quiet so you can start the matches or make an announcement, he does a very good job of it. I think you'd be good at that too, Phil.
Well, yeah, maybe. I think when we used to have the festivals at Pontins and there were hundreds of entries, John Williams, who was the tournament director there, was very similar.
We've got Rex Williams presenting the trophies here today. Have you already discussed that?
I didn't know he was presenting the trophy, but it's great to see
There
him.
he is.
Yeah, there he is, yeah.
91. He played golf yesterday. Fantastic.
I was talking about it earlier. The first time he won the championship, he challenged and beat Clark McConaughey. That was at the YMCA Stadium in Auckland in August of 1968.
Wow.
He also beat Bernard Bannett in a challenge match in Southampton. Other challenge matches to win the title were against Jack Carnham of BBC commentary fame. Eddie Charlton he beat twice down in Australia. And his last two World Championship wins were in 1982 and 83, overcoming Mark Wildman and then Fred Davis.
So I watched one of the times he played Eddie Charlton in Australia. I was there. 72 or 73 or something in Geelong. I can't remember the year.
It was 73.
73. Eddie Charlton was a pretty good billiards player. 300 break player.
Well, I think given their status within Q Sports, it would be fair to say that at the time, Rex Williams and Eddie Charlton were the best two players not to be World Snooker champion.
Yep.
He came very close in 72, did Rex. He missed a blue, a vital blue against Alex Higgins. And of course, the rest, as they say, is history. The other Rex Williams claim to fame, and he's still in the record books for this. The oldest ever world ranking event snooker finalist.
Wow.
53.
Wow. In Australia, we have a very good story about Bob Marshall from Western Australia, won many Australian championships, great billiards player. He retired from the game. He came back when the Australian Championship was made an open event. It used to be just between the state champions. He won that event. He was sent to the IBSF World Championship in India, where he was runner-up. He was 76 years old. It's just fantastic, isn't it?
Well, I know I've talked a lot about the late Clive Everton today, but I will say this, he held Bob in the highest possible regard.
Yeah. But it gives you an idea what billiards is like. It's a game where knowledge counts for so much, and you don't lose the knowledge. You might, your eyesight not do great, but you can wear glasses. It's not really a game of strength, it's a game of touch. If you've got the hunger and the nerves, there's nothing to stop you. And I mean, Dave's in his 50s, Peter Gilchrist in his 50s. There's a lot of great players. Drew Sitwala's, I think, past 50 now. Great pot.
Yeah, arguably the best part of the match.
A little half-ball cannon here, yellow top cushion red. Very difficult to judge the slide. That's good. It's not a great leave. It'll probably be a run-through cannon here, unless he plays it thin. That's not what he wanted. Rob's past 100 here. It's great to see him making a few points. Love to see this go on to be a big break. Brett Porter from Australia's posted on the feral discussion. What are you doing still awake, Brett? Brett's from Australia. Must be about 4 in the morning or something in Australia. Nice shot. Oh, this could be nasty, or it could be great. That's not too bad.
Yeah, the little nudge on the cue ball right at the end of that shot made all the difference.
So he's got a chance here. He should be back at top in 2. On the whole ferrule and deflection thing, Rob likes the deflection with the brass ferrule. He says there are certain shots where he can actually use the deflection to help him make the shot.
Oh, Brett Porter's just told us the time. It's 4:50 where he is.
4:50 a.m. Brett lives in Melbourne, plays billiards.
126.
Breaks on 126 now. Matthew's asked about a carbon fibre ferrule. There was a guy in Singapore who's experimenting with a ferrule that the outside of the ferrule was titanium, but the inner half of it was carbon fibre, and that took even less to keep more weight out of it. I don't know what happened to the experiment. I don't know how he went with it. He was a little bit concerned about strength and the bond between the two materials. I mean, there's so much experimentation with technology and the laminated cues, which are big in pool now. And breaks now 139.
Matthew Lawrenson is telling us that he's just around the corner from the Preston Guildhall where he saw Rex Williams play Alex Higgins in 1984. And he tells us they had an argument during the match, of course. And putting the words, of course, is perfectly reasonable because Alex Higgins was involved.
So I'm going to vacate my seat now, Phil. And I'm going to be replaced by the man who runs the venue, owns the venue, one of the best snooker clubs in England.
Absolutely right, yeah, he's the ringmaster. Thank you very much indeed, Jason. Thanks for your company today. And into the lion's den comes Paul Lloyd, the ringmaster. Paul, thanks very much for your hospitality, as always. And thanks very much for housing this particular championship. You must be really proud, not just of the fact you're holding the World Championship here, but of the facility in general.
Phil, I'm incredibly proud, to be honest with you. And can I just say it's an absolute honour to be sat here next to you, a legend of the world of cue sports.
Well, I'm very happy to be showered in compliments, but I think most legends are dead.
Well, we're so lucky here today. I mean, what a legend as well. We've just seen the camera. We've panned to him, Mr. Rex Williams, who, what an honour to have him here today at Landywood Snooker Club. I think when I first got asked to have the Billiards, the World Championships here, I was astounded that we would be considered. But the feedback that I've had from the players and the officials, it's been humbling. And we strive to make the conditions as best we can. And hopefully we're doing something right.
Now, I know that you turned professional on the snooker tour very briefly in the early 90s, so you understand the game. You know what's required in terms of playing the game at a very high level, and you've brought that expertise into this club. So, in many respects, it's a labour of love, I presume.
Yeah, most definitely. I remember when I was playing the game myself back in the 90s, and I mean, it was a totally different game back then. Unfortunately, you know, as in most things progress, and a lot of snooker clubs over the years have closed. But I always had this dream that if ever I was fortunate enough to be in the position to have my own club, I knew how I wanted it to be. Wouldn't it be great to walk in a club and every table, you know, even if there's only one table left in the whole club, you know, you wouldn't mind going on that table. I mean, when I was playing back in the 90s, you'd have 20 tables in the club, but if 2 or 3 of them were occupied, you'd rather just wait for those to come available. So I had a vision. Obviously, I'm extraordinarily keen on tradition. So the memorabilia was, a lot of the memorabilia you see around the club, it's items that I've collected over many, many years. And when you see events like this, and you're here, you know, you're sat next to me now, which I've got to say, it's just incredible. So yeah, it gives me an enormous amount of pride when we hear the feedback that we get. Not only with the billiards, you know, we do an awful lot on the snooker tour. We had a fantastic event earlier on this year with the pink ribbon. We raised a sizable amount of money for some great causes. And it was humbling then, you know, we get 32 main tour professionals come to Landywood. Kyron Wilson, so grateful. Kyron gave up his time and even brought the trophy with him, the World Snooker Trophy. And it was sat on the back of the bar. Amazing.
Yeah, what a great ambassador, by the way, Kyron is, and what a great player as well. He's backed up his World Championship win with 2 ranking titles already, the Xi'an Grand Prix and the Northern Ireland Open, and I think there might be a few more to come.
Yeah, I mean, we're very lucky. Kyron, he comes to the club once or twice a month and practices with our own Mark Joyce here. And he's a lovely, lovely man. And he jumped at the chance when we asked him to make an appearance in the tournament. And yeah, it was great. And it just gives the tournament, takes it onto another level when you get the current world champion appearing at the club.
And of course, the current world billiards champion will be appearing as well, because he's about to be crowned. Now, that is the great, and I use the word advisedly, the great Joe Davis. When he won the World Championship for the first time, snooker this is, in 1927, his pay packet was £6.10. This year, the winner got £500,000. Now, there's inflation for you.
Yeah, I mean, and I think snooker itself, with what's on the horizon, I think the prize money is going to just get bigger and bigger and bigger. But talking to the guys here at WBL World Billiards, I'm hopeful that that this sport, the sport of billiards, you know, hopefully somebody's going to step in and maybe look to increase the amount of money that's available for these guys, because when you watch these guys and you understand as a snooker player, and you understand how difficult it is to move 3 balls around a table, that there needs to be more rewards. It's an art form, and I do hope that at some stage some more money could be made available for these guys.
Yes, and because the game is so intricate, and because there are so many patterns you need to follow and be aware of, basically, to get to this level, it's a lifetime investment.
Yes, I mean, I've been fortunate enough to spend quite a lot of time with some of these guys, and talking to Peter Gilchrist and David himself, as you say, about to be crowned world champion for 2024. David puts an awful lot of his time into perfecting his art, and he's in no way, you know, thankfully, he finds the time, his own time. He gives up his own time, but unlike a lot of snooker players, he just can't afford to play this game full time.
So the 200 break has been achieved, but he's not satisfied. Wants to just keep going. The owner of the high break in the tournament already with 364. In fact, he's made the two highest breaks of the week. Now there's Tom Newman against Walter Lindrum in Burnley in 1931. They say the Crucible is intimate. Wow, the crowd is pretty close there. I was looking at that picture a little earlier on in awe. Did everyone in that audience realise they were in the presence of true sporting greatness? Tom Newman, obviously a wonderful player, but Walter Lindrum was otherworldly.
Most definitely. And Rex Williams, that's here today, he told me a little story about Walter Lindrum and how good he was at billiards. He said he was walking back from Leicester Square, the arena at Leicester Square, with Joe Davis. And he said to Joe, just how good is Walter Lindrum? And Joe said, he was that good, he could give the second best player in the world 10,000 point start and beat him any time he wanted to over the course of a week. And he said to Rex, and I should know that story is true because the second best player in the world was me.
Yeah, went to Australia to challenge Lindrum. Got soundly beaten, and it took him a while to get the money together to get the boat back home. By the way, Rob Hall's break concluded at 220. Fine effort, but it's academic. Now there is a venue a little closer to here, the Daily Mail Gold Cup in Birmingham. Of course, the first ever World Snooker Championship was held in Birmingham, Campkins Billiard Hall. Yeah, there it is. Look, Joe Davis against Sidney Smith. Don't think the lighting on that table was as good as the lighting on this one somehow. 40 watts if you're lucky.
Can I just, while I've got the microphone, I've got the opportunity. What I'd really like to say is, It's been absolutely fantastic having the guys from World Billiards here for the past 6 days. I'm so grateful that they've chosen Landywood as the venue for the second year running. Every single person that's competed over these 6 days, it's been great getting to know them all. The billiards, it's like a community. They're all so friendly. They all support each other. They stay around. They get behind the players. Just a fantastic group of people, and it's been a real privilege to play host to all of them.
Yes, and it wasn't just the World Championship. You also hosted the English Open, which David Causier won. In that, he made 3 breaks over 400, including a 450 against John Mullane in the last 16. So he's been playing well for a week now. I think it's fair to say he's in the groove. And I believe more billiards is coming your way in the next few months.
Yes, definitely. We do. We've got quite a lot of events lined up with the English Amateur Billiards Association, and in a couple of weeks' time, we're hosting the Four Nations of Billiards, where we have 8-man teams from England, Austria, Republic of Ireland, and Northern Ireland. So that should be a fantastic weekend of billiards again.
And you say Austria, and that's really interesting because Mozart played billiards.
See, Phil. See, you've got all these facts. It's incredible.
I would like to have his autograph. I think I could sell that for a few quid on eBay.
Yeah, I think a nice framed picture with Mozart's signature would look great on the walls at Landywood.
That's one of Charles Dawson against H.W. Stevenson, 1903 at the National Sporting Club. So Rob Hall gets 900 on the board.
Obviously, people that are listening to us, they can't see this, but we've got the tournament director, Angus, taking a picture of me and you, Phil. This is one for the album.
Well, I hope that's not an expensive mobile phone, because I think there's a danger I might break it with this photograph.
I'll leave you, Phil. Can I just say, again, what an honour to sit in the comms box with Phil Yates, the voice of snooker. Absolutely fantastic.
Paul, in all seriousness, the pleasure is all mine, and thank you very much indeed for putting together what is a great event, and also for this establishment, which is just what billiards and snooker in this area needs. And that's coming from a proud West Midlander. So Angus McAnally is joining us again for what is the last 50-odd minutes of the match. David Causier has the luxury of an almost 700-point lead. All Rob can do is keep plugging away.
Well, Phil, we're getting to a fascinating stage in this final. Just 51 minutes left, and a resurgence from Rob Hall. A tough ask, but he's doing all that he can do at the moment, which is just to eat back into that lead of Dave Causier. Needs to score at a ton every 6 minutes or whatever to push it right to the end, but it's a huge ask to hold the table for the remaining time. One day at a time is a motto that's used in many people's lives. So one shot at a time, one break at a time. So 9:37 to 16:15. And a noticeable change and a more upbeat second half of this competition. Both players seem to have found their mojo much better than in the first half.
Yeah, I think the key to this match, if it is a David Causier win, which is looking increasingly likely, has been the start he's made to both sessions. Much quicker out of the blocks in both. And ultimately, that's led to the great bulk of his lead. By the way, we must be doing something right, the two players out there. Doug Sloan has commented it's his first billiards game he's ever watched, and he's completely hooked.
Well, Doug, welcome along, and let's hope that you watch and play even more billiards. It's a beautiful game. It looks simple, believe you me, on one level it's not, but it's a joyous game, and the community that play it are wonderful people.
Otávio Abreu Sampaio from Brazil is commenting as well, so nice to hear that key sports enthusiasts in that country are into billiards as well. Of course, Igor Figueiredo, the snooker player from Brazil, will take part in the forthcoming Champion of Champions in Bolton. He's the reigning world seniors champion, and he's qualified for the Champion of Champions as a result of winning that.
And Sean Murphy, the magician, watching this online as he packs to head to China tonight, was just on the phone to him. And he's enjoying watching this and sends his best wishes to both players in the final. And Sean has said that at some stage in the future he will get to play even more billiards. We had a couple of games in the Stephen's Green Club in Dublin where he has his table when he was based here, and he really enjoyed it.
Well, I'm not a motivational speaker, but I will say this, if Sean's still listening, if he plays like he did at the Players' Championship 2 years ago, he will win in China. It's as simple as that. He played brilliantly there.
One of the best performances I think I've ever seen. He had a spell of 2 or 3 weeks, in fact, where he was just untouchable. Was it 5 or 6 at the top breaks in the tournament? He had 135, 136, 142, whatever.
It was crazy, yeah, because, of course, after winning that Players' Championship, he went and won the Tour Championship as well. Now, the only downside of that for Sean is that those points are coming off in February and April next year. So I think it's a high time he replaced them.
Christian Kirk in Northern Ireland, watching with his 9-year-old lad Alfie, a budding billiard enthusiast, and looking forward to visiting Landywood for the Four Nations tournament, which happens at the end of November here in Paul Lloyd's wonderful club. I have to say the facilities here are second to none. It's my first time here. I wasn't able to make the World Championships last year, but looking forward to returning. It really is, as Marshy says, the best venue in the country. The quality of the tables and the manner in which they're minded and presented, and Rob, who looks after the tables at night time, meticulous in the extreme, I would have thought. I've never seen 12 tables presented without one finger mark of any sort at the end of a day's play.
91.
So Rob edging towards a 600-point deficit at the moment with just 45 minutes left. Oh, and he's taken his eye off the ball on the balkline crossing, and that will be a huge disappointment because he's got the cue ball perfectly where he needed it, high on the billiard spot, but that'll be a huge disappointment. I think when you have to push it around the angles like that, Phil, that extra bit of energy can sometimes just take your eye off the ball. That'll be a huge disappointment, but a great effort nonetheless from Rob.
Yeah, I think it was a case of sometimes linguistic semantics when you talk about taking your eye off the ball. That's a euphemism for saying you lost concentration, but I think there he genuinely took his eye off the ball.
And Keith Patmore has been on to say, how long was this match over? Well, it's 5 hours. We started at 1 p.m. today, UK time, and took a break at the 2.5 hour mark. Had 1 hour for some food and refreshments, and a further 2 hours, as Ian Dennis has pointed out online there. Thank you, Ian, and good to see you here over the last few days.
Otavio from Brazil asking me whether I've ever commentated on three-cushion billiards. Well, the answer is no, but a good friend of mine, David Hendon, who's the lead commentator at Eurosport on snooker, they used to do three-cushion billiards there, and I know Dave absolutely loved it.
I've never tried it with the carom. I'd love to do it, but the table is so fast that you think the ball has stopped. It continues for another 10 feet, and then if you have a bit of running side on it, when it hits the last cushion, you think there's nothing left there, and it goes whoosh. Fascinating to play.
I think if it wasn't already the case, this is the visit where David Causier is putting the finishing touch to victory.
23.
Because, of course, you get to a point where the points required to make a comeback and the time left make it an impossibility.
One of the things I admire about Dave Causier is that he sets himself strong goals, and he was well beaten by Peter Gilchrist last year. I mean, Peter just went to town and it was a drubbing, something that Dave is not too used to. And he, of course, was very, very, very complimentary of the performance of Peter Gilchrist. But he vowed and he put all his energy into a game plan to win back the World Championships. And he has spent hours and hours and hours practicing for this moment. And, you know, all he can do is play his best. And if somebody beats him, that's fine. He has really worked hard to try and eliminate the mistakes. Although I have to say, in the first half of this match, I have never seen Rob and Dave make as many enforced errors, or unenforced errors indeed. Oh, that never looked like it was in, just a bit high. So 43 minutes left. 680 something points ahead. So imagine, Phil, that if Rob were to win this, he would have to hold the table from now till the bell goes and score at 10, 15 points a minute all the way through.
Well, let me put it this way. If he were to run out here and win, I think it would be one of the great stories in billiards history. And of course, the history of billiards is lengthy.
I have a wonderful piece of memorabilia on my wall at home on the table. A match I played with my late father, where he gave me 1,500 start. We played up to 5,000, and we played every 3 or 4 weeks when he was home from making movies or whatever. And the final happened on St. Stephen's Day, or Boxing Day as you call it over here, many, many years ago. And the final score was Ray McAnally 5,000, Angus McAnally 4,996. And I will never, ever, 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 ever forget the tension in those last few points. My mother, when we were going home, said, "You've no idea how glad I am he won." It would have been intolerable if you'd beaten him. I tell you what though, Phil, if Rob can get them to nice top of the table, while he's normally very methodical and just, well, he's had to put a lot of side together. Now there's Brendan Devlin doing his meticulous scoring. We'll get a photograph of that and post it online when he's finished. Every single shot of the match is there on that one sheet of A4. Quite extraordinary.
Yeah, and we've talked about the concentration required to play the game. Lots of concentration required to actually do that scoring as well. As Rob fails to get the in-off he wanted.
That's unfortunate because he had a chance, and the point I was going to make was that while he is normally very deliberate and methodical and has a beautiful pace about him, I have also seen him just take it up another 20% in terms of the pace, and he could suddenly start making centuries in maybe 5 minutes, which would be what he would need to do to get it over the line at this stage. So this is the perfect angle for the drop cannon. The white ball will end up behind the billiard spot, and the red should go off the cushion and out to leave it on for the pot. And there it is, virtually perfect, because there are two types of methods of playing top of the table. The floating white, which is what this is, where Dave will come in and off the cushion and kick the white back out a half an inch or whatever. And the other one is, there you see it there, the other one is the postman's knock, where he wedges the white tight onto the cushion.
You know, when you're a young man and you're interested in cue sports, you're generally drawn to the natural talents. But as you get older, I think you become to appreciate and admire even more the guys who are thoroughly dedicated. Now, David Causier is one of those people who is a natural talent, but also immensely dedicated. So good luck to him. He deserves everything he gets, which this season has been everything.
Yes, it'll be a clean sweep virtually. And every day after work, Dave has headed to his club and has played 4 hours practice. And there you see the beginning of the postman's knock, as it's called, from that movie, The Postman Always Rings Twice, Knocks Twice. As the yellow will hit the white, it'll go gadunk and stay there. You see it there. I remember watching one break he had, and you can just see the little red spot on the top of the white there. And as the cannon happened, the dot never moved for about 15 minutes. Now, depending on the position that Dave gets, he may have to move the white, but if not, I would suggest that that white red dot on the white may just simply stay there. Well, just moved ever so slightly. But if he gets it back into perfect top, I guarantee you the little double kiss will happen and the white will not budge. It will make it look very simple and a quick way to score, but the control needed to put the cue ball in the position you need is phenomenal.
51.
And there you see it. Perfect. Adrian Wright has been on to say this is the problem for English billiards as a spectator sport. 45 minutes to go, kind of half-time at football, and the result is known. Well, the result isn't definitely known, but it's certainly heading in Dave Causier's direction at the moment, simply because Rob may well run out of time. Just have a look now at the yellow ball as it hits the white, if he's perfectly on for this.
61.
And it wasn't perfectly on, so he had to move it there. But if he gets it back again, you'll see that little kiss cannon where the ball doesn't move at all. So he'll be moving the white on this shot.
66.
It must be a really nice, warm feeling for David Causier, knowing in his heart of hearts now he's going to reclaim a title that means so much to him.
Very much so. And one small consolation, I think, for Rob will be that at the moment he holds the high break. So I don't think Dave will have the high break on his mind. He'll simply just want to get over the line. Now, this is a shot. I don't know whether Dave can play it where he managed to go skinny on the red and get the cannon, but I think it's too skinny, but he often is able to play it without, no, he's going to play the pot. He sometimes can play the shot just to move the white ball closer to the behind the spot.
Held the cue ball so easily with the application of check side.
85.
Yes, he's not won every event on the World Billiards calendar this season because he didn't go down to New Zealand. In September they played back-to-back the Auckland Open and the New Zealand Open. Didn't win those because he wasn't entered. But every event he's entered, he's ended up with the silverware.
93.
Which in itself is a fantastic record, given the quality of the players on the WBL Tour.
95.
But it's also lovely to see the younger players and other players coming through, starting to make the breakthrough with century breaks, double centuries. And Dave just misses there on that in-off. So,
You know, I think he's missed that shot quite a few times today. At least 3 times I can recall. Sometimes even the very best have one shot that's, I suppose, a blind spot.
yes, and make no mistake, Dave will be hurting to miss what he would regard as a straightforward shot there. Now, I wonder, will Rob just be able to relax a little bit if he realises that there isn't really time to score over 700 in a half an hour? It would be a huge ask. So maybe the arm will become a little bit freer and he will find it easier to play a bit looser. Somebody asking online, what about the 1500 up? There are a couple of different formats. The short format, the match play format, which we play at the Snooker Billiards Ireland Academy in Carlow every year, are games of 100 points. So you have a best of 5, best of 7, best of 9 as you progress through. And then in terms of the long format, there are 2 formats for the long format. This one, which is timed, so oh, that's unfortunate now, just didn't manage to get the top of the ball, so he's missed that in off there. But the 2 long up formats are, one is timed, as this is. We started off with 90-minute matches in the group stages, then 2 hours, 2.5, 3, 4, and 5. And the other one is where you hit a number. You go for 1,500, then 2,000, 2.5, and possibly 3,000 for the final or whatever. Now, this is not as easy as it looks. Needs to get lots of right hand side if he's going for the in-off. Just gone too early. Has it? Yeah. Amazing. Just shows you the side on the cue ball managed to get it in. Rex Williams there, and behind him Mark and Tracy Hurst, Mark has been playing for the last week here, and Tracy supporting him every step of the way. The 6 shot from Dave there.
Yeah, that is like one of those relegation battles, isn't it? The 6-pointer.
Jason Marsh there saying it just shows how much of an effect the side can have on the ball. Absolutely. It makes the pocket so much wider that if you get lots of side on the cue ball, even if Dave were to play the run through and off here, the white will get out of the way and the side will take he needed to get the white out of the way, and then the left hand side on the yellow would spin it in off the corner of the pocket.
That was what Dennis Taylor refers to as the dreaded double kiss, the old DDK.
The DDK. I did an exhibition last week with Dennis and Ken Doherty in Dublin, and I have to say it was one of the funniest nights we've had for years. There's two great characters, full of comedy, full of humour, and I tell you what, Ken is still playing a mean game of snooker.
He's got the most distinctive laugh.
Yes, it can be heard from outer space, I would think.
He's got this thing with me, every time he sees me, he says, unbelievable, because he's got this thing that I use the word unbelievable an awful lot, and I try to avoid it at all costs because I feel self-conscious about it now. But yeah, he's a really good guy, Ken. I was doing reports for RTE Radio when he won the World Championship in 1997, and the impact it had over there on the Emerald Isle was just extraordinary, wasn't it?
Well, one of the stories he tells in his exhibitions is that when he came home to Ireland, having won the trophy, and the police were out to mind the thousands of people who turned up, the chief superintendent of the police in Dublin came to him and said, Ken, we need you to win the World Championships every year because there was no crime in Dublin for the duration of the match.
That's right, and of course the following year he got to the final, lost to John Higgins, and he said, yeah, it was a bit different then. I got home and I had to pay my own taxi back to the house. So Rob Hall gets into 4 figures. The deficit, though, a very daunting 765.
So, Phil, as somebody who's been watching Q Sports for many, many years, but not getting to see a whole lot of billiards during the course of your normal year, what have you felt as you look at see the skill set of these players?
Well, to be honest, I'm going to use a word that Ken says I use a lot. Unbelievable. Yeah, they really are fantastic. And of course, the great thing about this is because there's not a lot of prize money in billiards, they are actually Corinthians. Okay, £5,000, not to be sniffed at. That's the first prize. but it's a labour of love, and that in itself, I think, demands respect.
I wonder now that Rob's up against it, we'll play the long Jenny with loads of right-hand sides. Just watch this cue ball. If it's hit correctly, the spin into the corner pocket now. Here it comes, and in it goes. That's the classic long Jenny. Would just like the yellow to come another inch or two off the pocket, off the cushion rail, but he can get a bit of right-hand side now and either go direct or just off the back cushion. So just off the back cushion and get it. You saw the side there, just jump the cue ball. Now, two options here. He can play this as a gentle in-off if he can get, and leave it for the drop cannon.
Yeah, Roscoe said not the result that Rob wanted, but he's done himself proud and also Lincoln proud, and I absolutely agree with that.
Very much so. And Rob is a billiards fan through and through. He spends an awful lot of time coaching, traveling the country, and he has a wonderful website with tutorials on it. He's very much in demand, and his knowledge of the game and his love of the game is legendary. And it's only a matter of time before he wins the World Championship.
Yeah, Marshy said Rob's time will definitely come. He's knocking on the door. Well, I think it might well come, but the great thing about sport is you can't say anything's definite.
It's true.
Who would have thought, when he was blazing a trail in the early 1980s, who would have thought that Jimmy White never won the World Snooker Championship? You would have thought it was an absolute racing certainty, but it never happened.
6 finals. It really is the one that got away, and this could be unlucky if he's blocked. Now he'll be able to run through off the virtually full ball off the yellow and make the little cannon. Was he playing off the gunk? I think he might have been trying to get the yellow to hit the jaw of the middle pocket and come back towards him.
By the way, the first actual match for the World Billiards Championship title was in 1870. John Roberts against William Cook, and the prize then was £100. Now you think, well, not a lot. In 1870, that was a king's ransom.
You could probably buy a house for it. I never really liked the expression playing for pride, but I really know that Rob would love to knock in a 2 or 3 or 400. What a beautiful putt that was. And just to get some respectability onto these scores, because we all know how good a player he is, and his touch at top is beautiful. And it's encouraging, I suppose, for us mere mortals who play the game, that both Dave and Rob have suffered from a little bit of nerves today, and the gravity of the situation, the importance of playing in the World Championships in the final, and the respect that the trophy is given has affected both their games, I think.
You know, John Spencer, apart from being a 3-time world snooker champion, was also a very good commentator, really good analyst who, at the peak of his powers in the commentary box, could dissect a game brilliantly. And I always remember him saying to me, you know, the best matches, the most entertaining matches are the ones where they miss.
Now we should see the run through and off here. The yellow out of the way and the white runs through which sides, but he just didn't get enough running side on it, a bit too thick on it, and he'll be disappointed. Now, the only shot on really for Dave is the pot. And will he try and run 10 or 11 or 12 reds, or will he simply do a Steve Davis with the foot on the throat and play the double balk? Yep. And that's a mark of the respect that he has for Rob. Now, has he got the red into balk? I don't think he has. So a chance for Rob now, a skinny cannon.
Well, Peter Ainsworth has told us that £100 in 1870 is the equivalent of £15,000 today. So he's right, not as big a difference as you might imagine.
Lovely judgment of pace there. Very easy to hit that too hard and lose the red into beyond the balk lines. So just under 25 minutes left in this 5-hour final for the 2024 World Billiards Championship final. And as I say that, an extraordinary miss from Rob. And we've seen Dave do that as well. I don't know whether the throw of the ball is slightly different, but that's your standard half ball in off to the middle pocket. It's bread and butter. A shot that perhaps, again, maybe both of them have suffered from just taking the lack of concentration just in that moment.
Yeah, it's amazing how many in-offs they've missed in that middle pocket today, both of them.
Well, I think I've seen both of them miss more shots like that in this final than I have perhaps in the entire season that we've had on World Billiards. And just while I have the opportunity as tournament director, I want to pay a big debt of gratitude and say thank you to our referees who've travelled from far and near to be here. It is, as you know, Phil, a thankless job on occasions to be refereeing for hours, and it's quite tiring. Matches in 90 minutes, 2 hours, 2.5 or whatever, but it makes such a difference to the players to be able to, it's not like the professional snooker scene. So we're very grateful to all of our referees and to all of our match officials. And also, one of the great things in the billiard fraternity is that every player in the tournament also referees one match as part of the agreement to play in the tournament. So it's incredible to watch Peter Gilchrist and Peter Sheehan and Martin Goodwill and Dave Causier and Rob Hall finish their match, and then they go over to table 7 where Fungus McNulty, as in me, is playing, you know, Jimmy McTavish, and they're making breaks of 40 and 50, and a world champion is refereeing your match and complimenting you and helping you, and there's no sense of 4, 6. It's wonderful.
I think that's a great idea. Ronnie O'Sullivan refereeing a snooker match on the WST. Now there's a thought.
Have a look up at the sky. Oh, there's 3 pigs flying over there, Phil. Has he enough side just to catch it? Yes, indeed. It's amazing on these fine cloths, on these beautiful star tables. Just the trace of side is your friend, but also it can be your mortal enemy if it's unwanted side and you think the ball is heading on a straight trajectory and suddenly it says to you, excuse me, no, I'm not.
S-Fan has said, can't believe the amount of easy losers that have been missed today. Has to be the conditions. Well, the conditions are excellent. We must make that point. But they maybe are a little different to what the players are used to. Also as well, there's no doubt when the pressure is cranked up, anything can be missed. And there's no greater pressure than a world final.
And there's a perfect example of just how much the side can affect the cue ball. Dave had loads of left-hand side on that ball, and it straightened it up and held it for the cannon. And it can kill the pace of the ball too. So that's one of the things I love about billiards, the things you can do with the cue ball. So as soon as he can, Dave would like to get that white ball down behind the billiard spot. And there you see the amount of reverse running side that Dave put on that to get up. Now Dave has missed a couple of in-offs from this shot. Is he going for the skinny in-off or the pot? No, he's getting the pot. And if he can get it down onto the half ball line, which that's just about a bit narrow, but he'll be able to get this cannon, send the white off the sides and back towards the centre of the table there.
And that's a milestone of sorts. That equals the amount of points that Peter Gilchrist amassed against him in the final last year.
Didn't want to pot his opponent because that ball stays down now, so a maximum of a further 45 points could be scored now. You can only have 15 hazards in a row, and because the other ball is off the table, it's just red and yellow on the table, so a maximum of 15 hazards. But I think Dave will get the double balk here as soon as he can, as in now. Just needs that to check off the last cushion, and that's absolutely perfect. So I think Rob at this stage will have to go and try and make a scoring visit off this rather than the push out, which is just a miss, not a foul. There's nothing to be gained at this stage by playing safe. Well, indeed he is, staying true to his method of play. So an easy putt for Dave. Bring the cue ball out, get in off the white, bring it out to the centre of the table, get the drop cannon, and I would suggest that Dave will be at top of the table in 3 shots.
Here's a question for you, Angus. How do you spell balk?
Baulk.
Exactly. Now, I was the Times snooker and billiards correspondent for many a year, and every time I mentioned that word in the Times, it was subbed and it was changed to BALK, and it used to drive me to distraction.
Wow, look at this. Now, what's happened there is that when Dave played the shot, the balls ended up touching. So if your striker's ball, as in the yellow, is literally touching one of the other balls, it's an automatic respot, which Dave has had to do, but he's played that perfectly. So now again, the perfect drop cannon position. The white will go off the side and top cushions, and the red will go towards the pocket. And this is a wonderful scoring opportunity for Dave yet again. I think it's fair to say now that it's in the bag for Dave. He'll be so relieved because he has really, really worked hard so much for this, and he hasn't been sleeping all that well, I'd say, in the knowledge that this is hanging over him from last year, where Peter Gilchrist just played superbly well. And it was virtually a contest that was over with 45 minutes to go, I would think.
Yeah, in snooker, of course, most of the players these days, the well-known players, have nicknames. Some are contrived. Most, actually. But I think if a billiard player were to have a nickname, this one should be called Dominant Dave. You can't do any better than winning 100% of the tournaments you enter in a single season.
I'd have to agree. What a stunning record. Now, that little kiss on the yellow has made this pot red ever so slightly tougher. And that's why Dave couldn't do too much work on it. John Kay wondering, is that touching ball rule new? No, it's always been in billiards. If the striker's ball, so in other words, in this instance, if the yellow was touching either the yellow or the white, that would be an automatic respot. But if, and Dave is the striker on yellow, if the white was touching the red, then there's no problem with that. So now this is a lovely rescue shot where Dave will play the cannon and get the white closer to the centre of the table like that.
More billiards to come in terms of world ranking events before the end of the calendar year. The Queensland Open will be played in November at the Redcliffe Snooker Centre. British Open is at Club 200 in Manchester.
Yes, a new club for us. We're looking forward to being there for the first time. I believe it's fantastic. I haven't been, but I'm looking forward to that very much.
And then in the new year, in late January, it's the UK Championship.
Absolutely. Hello to Nathan Mann, who's a lovely billiard player, who says a great appreciation for the ease with which both perfect the use of side on these tricky conditions. The very best players can adapt across different cloths with great ease, and that is so true. So a gentle little cannon here. I remember watching Mike Russell play that cannon sequence, and he would play the pot red, another pot red, and the cannon, and after about 8 or 10 cannons, the object ball had moved maybe 1/4 of 1 inch. Phenomenal.
Doug Sloan asks a question. I'm not quite sure of the answer. Are all of the other billiard tournaments on YouTube?
Yes, if you go to our YouTube site, World Billiards on YouTube, you will see all of the matches, beautifully shot by Sam Jones from TYP, our streaming partner for World Billiards, and they're all there. Whenever I want a good laugh, I go and watch myself playing in some of the matches that have been recorded. But you can see Dave's 842 break from Leeds from a few months ago. You can see Peter's win last year. All of the tournaments are there. And it's a great way to learn and to watch and to see the repetition of the little shot sequence. I'm sure, Phil, you've even seen over the course of the last 5 hours a repetition of the little sequences that make sense to scoring. And the more you see it and the more you play with it, you actually then learn the best way to play the game.
Yeah, I'm a self-confessed novice, but of course, if you watch enough, you do pick things up, definitely. Matthew Lowson said, I've watched the World Snooker Championship since I was 9, but this is the first year I've been able to follow the World Billiards Championship. It's been fascinating and very enjoyable all week. Yeah, I'd second that one.
Well, Phil, I'm going to leave you for a moment and let you take this one home. Again, thank you so much for being here. I hope you're available to us for the World Championships every year. It means the world for us to have you here, the voice of snooker and billiards. And as a long-term admirer, as a colleague of yours for many years on the Irish Open and the Masters in Goffs and indeed in City West, it's a great pleasure to have you here. And we'll see you when the match is over.
Great to see you again, Angus. Thank you very much indeed. Another comment from someone who I hold in the very highest regard, Bob Jewett, who is a fount of information when it comes to pool. He's always commenting with very insightful information on the AZ Billiards website. He's asking, is this close to being a high total for a 5-hour match? Well, I don't think so, really, Bob. Hope to see you at the Moscone Cup in Florida at the end of November. Can't wait for that one. So Causier on another century. He's made over 40 in this tournament. The next target for him to get to 2,000. So Bob's informing me he will be at the Moscone Cup at the Carib Royale Resort in Orlando, Florida at the end of November, the first few days of December. And he'll also be at the Hall of Fame banquet where I'll be attending as well. And I'm delighted to say there, one of the inductees will be a really good friend of mine, Mike Panozzo, who runs Billiards Digest magazine from Chicago, Illinois. And that is a wonderful publication. And increasingly so, as Chris Coombe comes back into the commentary box, I think it's been a pretty wonderful second half from David Causier.
Yeah, hi Phil. Yeah, Dave has just been fantastic, hasn't he? He's obviously really pulled away in this final, and what a wonderful player he is, really. I mean, Rob has, we've been watching there out in the match room there, and Rob's really, put up a good fight, obviously, given his full effort until the very end, as you would expect from Rob. He's got a lot of pride of performance. But David's just been too strong here, hasn't he? Just been relentless once again. And yeah, and it certainly looks like, as he's in perfect position here, that he'll be reaching the 1,000 points mark in terms of his lead. But what an excellent display.
You know, it's remarkable. He's missed that shot on more than one occasion. I think it's when he tries to hold too much and he undercuts the pot.
Yeah, it's always easy to do that, isn't it? Especially on these super fast cloths. It's so easy just to, maybe slightly decelerate through the cue ball perhaps, or just try to hold it too much. But yeah, it must be such intense powers of concentration that these players require, isn't it, over this sort of distance, isn't it? I mean, as they're getting towards the end of the match now, they must be, almost, you'd think, to the end of their focus, really, because it's been a grueling few days here at Landywood.
Bob Jewett has been given his answer by Peter Ainsworth, who's very knowledgeable in these things. Peter tells us Mike Russell totalled 3,001 points in a 5-hour match in the 2011 IBSF Billiards Championship.
Yeah, that really is an incredible level of scoring, isn't it? I mean, especially over that distance, maintaining that level of scoring over 5 hours is really something. And I imagine a lot of that would have been at the top of the table. And I'm not sure what his average would have been in that match, but given the total, most probably been a very big average of the breaks there.
And of course, with the pressure off, Causier just seems to be playing faster and faster.
Yeah, it's the same as snooker, isn't it? It must be everything seems to become quite easy when the pressure's off. Although maybe we've put the commentator's curse there with that miss, but yeah, I think obviously both players will be continuing until the end. But it must be a great relief for Dave to know that he's got his name back on that John Roberts trophy once again.
Well, there's another little wrinkle with what Peter Ainsworth was telling us. When Russell scored 3,001 points in that 5-hour match, the match finished 12 minutes early because his opponent conceded.
Wow. Yeah, well, if that's the case, then there could have been another potential, 200 points to that total potentially. Then, if that match continued until the end, but
this is no criticism, it's just the way the format is. But right now they're going through the motions, these two. Rob Hall knows he's been consigned to a runner-up finish in the World Championship for the 4th time over the years. David Causier knows he's going to regain this prestigious title.
Yeah, I'm sure Rob will have a lot of positive to take away from his performance. Obviously, he'll be disappointed, but he's shown what a class player he is, and he's proved that many times over the years.
Yeah, and let's not forget he was the man responsible for beating the defending champion, Peter Gilchrist, in the semi-finals.
Yeah, that match is on our YouTube channel. I mean, for those that weren't able to watch it live or be here in the venue, it's certainly be one to catch up on that match because the lead changed hands several times, and to defeat a player of Peter Gilchrist's class is certainly something that he'll be viewing as a big positive in terms of his performance. So I'd recommend that you re-watch that match. It'll be a great display. But as we see another close-up there of Brendan's marking sheet, Brendan Devlin. Talking about concentration, I feel I've done that sort of thing in the past, and it takes a lot of concentration to do what Brendan is doing there, the recording, because every single shot has to be marked down. So that's an interesting record of what's been going on here.
Well, seeing that reminds me of a story from the Crucible. There was a feature writer for the Sunday Times came up, and he was in the press seats, and he was using a nylon nib pen to make some notes. And he was so close to the table, as you are there in the press seats, that one of the players, Terry Griffiths at the time, actually asked him to stop writing because the noise of the nib on the on the paper was actually taking Terry off.
Yeah. Incredible. Yeah. Yeah, I know it may have been mentioned earlier on in the commentary, but I know from speaking to Brendan that he actually really enjoys doing the recording and as his way of sort of watching a match. And the other good thing about that is that you can work out the averages from each player, which is, for those who are not familiar, how many points on average a player scores in each visit to the table.
So, Chris, as we see another mistake there. So, Chris, what is a good average? A good solid average?
I think anything over 50 is pretty solid, really. I'm not entirely sure what the record is, but certainly there's been times when players have averaged over 100, as we see another shot of Rex Williams there. Multiple-time world champion, and it's great to see him play. And talking about averages, I mean, I think Rex is probably one of the last players, really, that's around from the era when they would have played matches over a fortnight. or a week, or I know Rex said he played matches over 2 weeks as well. So when you're talking about averages, if you averaged sort of over 50 over that length of play, then that's really an incredible level of performance. But even over in an hour's match, I mean, if you're averaging 50 or more, then that's pretty solid, really.
So just 4 minutes and 50 seconds to wait for David Causier to become world champion again.
Yeah, that incredible John Roberts trophy will be presented, and what a magnificent piece of silverware that is. And I know David said he did want it before when it was previously presented for the English Billiards Championship in the past, but I think it's quite right that it's now been presented for this prestigious event, the main event on our calendar.
So what I'm going to do at the end of the match is a quick wrap up. The essential information will be given, and then I'll allow you to watch the trophy presentation. Once again, Chris, I must say thank you very much indeed for allowing me to be involved in this World Billiards final. It's my second. I'm learning a little more, and I'm certainly very appreciative of the skills on display here.
Thanks a lot, Phil. Yes, it's a pleasure to have you here. We're really grateful for you being here, and yeah, it's an incredible final, isn't it? I mean, just seeing these skills of these players, not just in this final, but through the whole 6 days we've been here. It's and to do it at somewhere like Landywood is top drawer.
And the point we must reiterate is that even though at times these two have played some very nice stuff today, they've been nowhere near their best.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, I mean, Dave's sort of done very well to get to the lead that he's got, but I think both players, we'll probably say they didn't play the very top form, but it's like I say, it's been a long 6 days, hasn't it? I mean, since they've got here, and as you said earlier, Phil, I think it's all about the W, all about the win, isn't it? Really, at this stage of the event.
Yeah, I think now he's exercised the demons of what happened last year. I think you might well see David Causier come back in 12 months' time and play lights out and be very, very tough to overcome.
Yeah, Dave would have been very disappointed last year. Since then, though, he's really bounced back very quickly and been undefeated this year in every event that he's played in. But this will really be the icing on the cake for the last year since we were here last October. And as we go into the next event next month in Manchester, he'll be very, very hard to beat and full of confidence.
And there is one consolation for Rob Hall. It's impossible now for his high break to be beaten. 3-6-4 is the break from this year's championship, which is the best. And so he will be the recipient of £364 as a consequence, plus the £2,500 he receives as the World Championship runner-up.
That's right, yeah, £1 a point. And sometimes we've seen a 400 or 500 break, but still it's Rob will be delighted to take the high break prize in the event, and very well deserved.
Yeah, the English Open was played at this venue just before this championship began, and David Causier made 400 breaks in that event.
Yeah, exactly, and those matches as well were only an hour match or 90 minutes in the knockout, so didn't have the same length of matches that we have in the World Championship, sort of 3, 4, 5 hours, but it certainly didn't take Dave or all the other top players very long to settle in based on that level of scoring in the break building.
So the clock ticks down to 27 seconds. It would be fitting if Causier was at the table when it was all over. And I think he will be now.
Yeah, very well played to Dave Causier, regaining the title and an FA World Championship on his CV. Hard look to Rob Hall, but a great performance from him, and that he's got a lot of positives to take away from.
That is that. The final is over, and David Causier wins very comfortably indeed. It wasn't comfortable during the first session at times. It looked as though Robert Hall could bounce back from a slow start and put David Causier under real pressure. It didn't work out that way. In the second half, Causier came out with all guns blazing, built up a big lead, and it was never under threat. So David Causier wins by 2,088 points to 1,109, and as a result, he is crowned the World Billiards Champion of 2024. He regains the title. He receives a first prize of £5,000, and in every tournament he's played this season, he's won. That is a remarkable achievement. From Phil Yates here at Landywood Snooker Centre, thanks very much for being with us during the course of this 5-hour final, and let's hope we can do it again in the future.